We're going to begin with a major winter storm here in the Northeast. Take a look at this massive system. It's a big one. More than 45 million people could be affected, they say. New York and Boston might see the most snowfall in about 2 years. Meteorologist Mike Seidel with our partners at the Weather Channel is here in New York Central Park. Mike, good morning to you. When I was coming in this morning, it was just nasty rain. I didn't get to see much snow, but it looks like it's picking up now.
It is, and you'll deal with it on the way out the door later on this morning, Gayle. Can you believe it? Finally, a plowable snowfall, the first one in 2 years. It's coming down in the park. It's sticking. Our temperature is at 33, so that's going to help us out a little bit. Let's go to the current radar. You can see where it's snowing from Central PA State College over towards the Poconos and all the way up into Boston, where it'll end later on today around 4 or 5 o'clock. But I want to show you Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, north of Philly, not far from the Poconos, and it's snowing this morning. Look at it coming down and adding up. Temperatures there are just below freezing. Raining in Philly, but it will change over to snow. It'll be a slushy inch or two in Philadelphia. Let's time it out for you. The snow picks up, in fact, between now and about 10 to 11 here in New York City, the tri-state area. We're expecting snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches an hour of heavy, wet snow, what we call a thump of snow. And then by midday, it's done. I mean, it's just going to shut off. This afternoon, the sun comes out, temperatures near 40. In Boston, as I mentioned, the snow will taper off for the evening commute. Much better afternoon commute here in the tri-state area as things melt off the roadways. How much snowfall? That's the big question. Here in New York City, we're looking for 5 to 8 inches. Lesser amounts as you go down towards Philly. There may be a few spots in Massachusetts that pick up 8 to 10 inches. But again, that combined with the wind, that's another issue on the coast. We've got coastal warnings from the Delaware coast all the way up to the Cape and the islands. High tide later on this morning, we could see water rises 1 to 2 feet above normally dry ground, and the combination of 50-mile-an-hour winds and heavy wet snow on tree limbs could knock out power. In fact, already this morning, Gayle, we have about 60,000 customers without power in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. And by the way, Gayle, this morning, for the first time in a long time, snow plows hitting the streets here in Central Park.
All right, Mike, people enjoy it for the first hour. Then we're like, okay, that's enough. But
not jogging out there.
Yeah, I see people jogging. Mike Seidel, we thank you.
We're going to begin with the war in Gaza and a new word of warning from President Biden to Israel's leaders, asking them to protect Palestinian civilians in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israel says it's preparing to expand its military operations there, targeting Hamas leadership. Around 130 hostages taken from Israel still believed to be held there by Palestinian militants. Palestinians, meanwhile, say that dozens of civilians in Rafah have already been killed in operations there. Nancy Cordes is at the White House for us, where the King of Jordan visited yesterday. Nancy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tony. What we saw here at the White House yesterday was really something new. For the first time since this war began, we saw the U.S. president standing side by side with an Arab leader talking tough to Israel. It comes amid fresh concerns that Gaza's civilian population is being placed in an impossible situation.
We cannot stand by and let this continue.
President Biden and Jordan's King Abdullah did not mince words, warning Israel not to launch a major offensive in the most densely populated part of southern Gaza.
And now they're packed into Rafah, exposed and vulnerable. They need to be protected.
Rafah is a city near Gaza's border with Egypt. More than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering there after Israel urged them to leave Hamas strongholds in the north 4 months ago. But now Israel wants to rid Rafah of Hamas fighters and has threatened to invade the city.
Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying, lose the war. Keep Hamas there.
In a Monday raid, Israeli defense forces rescued 2 hostages from a second-story apartment in Rafah. But according to Israel's military, Hamas is still holding more than 130 Israeli hostages. And the rescue came at a heavy price, according to CBS News producer Marwan Al-Ghul.
Dozens of Palestinians were killed in this operation. The majority of them are children and women.
Israel is vowing not to invade Rafah without a plan to move civilians out first.
Kids in Gaza are now dying from the deliberate withholding of food.
President Biden is facing mounting pressure from his own party to stave off a humanitarian disaster.
President Biden must take action in response to what is happening.
Speaking of action, Nancy, the Senate has just passed a $95 billion foreign aid bill for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, but it's got a very uncertain future. What more can you tell us?
Well, this is a major milestone, Tony. This funding has been in limbo for months. There was an all-nighter in the Senate that set up this early morning vote. The bill eventually passed with bipartisan support, 22 Republican senators voting for it, joining Democrats. But in the House, I have to tell you, things are very uncertain. Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, who is a close Trump ally, is already throwing cold water on this bill, saying in a statement on Monday night, House Republicans were crystal clear that any so-called national security supplemental legislation must recognize that national security begins at our own border. Now, keep in mind, it was just a week ago that Speaker Johnson himself said that the Senate's bipartisan border deal was dead on arrival in the House, which helped to kill it. And some in Johnson's party have already threatened to remove him if he does bring this Ukraine aid to a vote in the House. And as you know, Trump has already told Republicans he doesn't want them to pass a border bill before the election. And so, yes, it is a big deal that this has passed in the Senate, but still lots of questions about where they go from here, Tony.
Yeah, indeed. Nancy, thank you very much.
Former President Trump has filed a formal appeal to the Supreme Court to consider his claim to immunity from federal charges over the January 6th attack. Trump's lawyers want the trial to stay on hold while justices debate whether Trump has immunity for anything he did as president. Despite his legal troubles, a CBS News poll shows the former president still has a commanding lead over Nikki Haley in the upcoming South Carolina primary. Caitlin Huey-Burns is covering that race in Columbia, South Carolina, where early voting began yesterday.
He's not qualified to be the president of the United States.
Former Ambassador Nikki Haley leveling some of her strongest criticisms yet of former President Donald Trump. But despite a campaign push in her home state, a new CBS poll shows 75% of likely GOP primary voters in South Carolina say Haley being from there makes no difference, while Trump's approval as president eclipses Haley's job approval as governor there by more than 20 points.
How do you explain his popularity here?
South Carolinians haven't voted yet. You can look at any poll you want, but the reality is this is when they are starting to pay attention.
Saturday in South Carolina, Trump said he wouldn't protect NATO countries unless they paid their dues. As for Russia,
I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
Controversial comments that drew international condemnation.
And the idea that he would side with Putin, a man who kills his opponents. Think about that.
Trump also took personal aim at Haley's husband, who's deployed in Africa with the South Carolina Army National Guard.
What happened to her husband? Where is he? He's gone.
And you're going to mock my husband who's deployed 8,000 miles away? What does that say about someone who wants to be commander-in-chief?
And in another sign of Trump's effort to seal his grip on the Republican Party, he wants his own daughter-in-law to help run the RNC. He is endorsing Lara Trump as co-chair of the RNC, along with Michael Whatley. Now, Whatley has echoed Trump's false claims about election fraud in 2020. He is currently the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, and if elected, he would replace Ronna McDaniel, who's expected to step down after the South Carolina primary here next Saturday. Gayle?
Caitlin, thank you. Here in New York, the polls are open. It's a special election to fill the House seat left vacant by the disgraced former Republican congressman. That's George Santos on your screen. It's a suburban district on the edge of New York City where the influx of migrants west north from the border has now become a major campaign issue. Scott McFarland is at a polling place on Long Island. Scott, I see the snow's coming down. I wonder how that will affect the turnout. Good morning to you.
Welcome to the snow globe election. Voters who trudge through this, though, Gayle, are going to have some huge sway. This is a swing district. It'll be a close race, and both parties are closely watching to get some read on what's going to happen in November. The candidates are Democrat Tom Suozzi, who previously served here for 3 terms in Congress. The Republican is Mazi Pilip, a county legislator, mother of 7, who once served in the Israeli military. Both are trying to appeal to those same voters who elected George Santos, who was expelled from Congress after fabricating a life story and after getting indicted for conspiracy and fraud. Immigration, a pivotal issue here. New York is reeling from the migrants bust from the southern border. But if Democrats win here, Tony, they cut into an already narrow Republican majority in the U.S. House. They just need their shovels.
Yep, just a handful of seats. Scott, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to new information about that deadly shooting at Joel Osteen's mega church in Houston. We're seeing new video showing the chaos Sunday as the shots rang out. Police say the shooter was a 36-year-old woman with a history of mental illness who had attended the church in the past year. Omar Villafranca has the latest.
Investigators are sifting through chilling new videos like this, showing panicked churchgoers in one of the country's largest houses of worship. With her son by her side, police say 36-year-old Genesee Moreno walked into the megachurch carrying an AR-style rifle. When she was confronted by off-duty officers working security, she opened fire.
They were repetitive, boom, 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 boom.
The sound sent the congregation scrambling as security returned fire, killing the shooter.
If it weren't for them, the number of casualties and victims would have been much higher. There is no doubt.
The shooter's son appeared to be caught in the crossfire. The boy remains hospitalized in critical condition. A 57-year-old man who was also struck has been released from the hospital. While investigators zero in on a motive, they revealed yesterday one of the shooter's guns had a sticker reading Palestine on it. They also found anti-Semitic writings, but say they believe these may be related to a dispute with her ex-husband's family.
There was a familial dispute, and some of those individuals are Jewish.
Officials said the shooter has a history of mental illness and was arrested at least 6 times, including a weapons charge. Our CBS affiliate, KHOU, spoke to the shooter's mother-in-law, who says there were so many warning signs.
She was violent many times. We've asked for help from police and received it many times, but she was still allowed to own guns.
For CBS Mornings, Omar Villafranca in Texas.
Americans planning a winter break in the Bahamas or Jamaica have been told to watch where they go. The State Department is warning about safety risks because of an increase in crime in the region. Manuel Bojorquez reports on concerns and why those countries say we don't need to worry.
Bahamian officials point to the sheer number of tourists as a sign that visitors feel safe after the U.S. State Department renewed a Level 2 travel advisory for the Bahamas.
We had over 9 million last year, and the overwhelming majority of those individuals left satisfied, safe.
The island country has seen a nearly 8% increase in homicides, mainly local gang-related killings, among the latest last week.
This is the scene where a murder happened in broad daylight. It's the middle of the afternoon. It's just across the street from a playground. Though this is a residential neighborhood, no reason for tourists, I'm told, to come through this area.
This now accounts for murder number 25.
Nassau-based channel Eyewitness News has been covering the crimes.
That crime situation that is happening in the Bahamas, local communities, gang-related incidents, not crime that you're hearing about in tourist hotspots or at the popular resorts.
2 Kentucky women say they were drugged and raped by resort employees after visiting a beach in central Grand Bahama.
It was like a dream vacation until it wasn't.
2 men have been arrested in connection with the alleged assault, though the resort says surveillance footage conflicts with the women's account. Tourism makes up around 70% of the Bahamas' gross domestic product and employs more than half of the country's workforce. Vendors and the government alike are concerned about the travel warning's fallout.
Nassau is safe and beautiful.
There are similar concerns in Jamaica, where the U.S. recently reissued a Level 3 warning, meaning reconsider travel. We spoke with tourists in Nassau.
Keep an eye out. Yeah. That's my big thing. Keep an eye out.
Officials in the Bahamas continue to point out that the homicides mentioned in the latest U.S. security alert have not happened in tourist areas. Gayle?
All right, Manny, thank you very much.
Jon Stewart is back in Late Night. One of the smartest comedy voices in America returned to his role on The Daily Show. He'll be there every Monday until the election, and as you'd expect, he did not hold back.
Welcome to The Daily Show. I'm excited to be back. I'm very excited.
For the first time in nearly a decade, Jon Stewart returned to the desk on Comedy Central's The Daily Show, diving right in and tackling fringe conspiracy theories.
Kansas City Chiefs are world champions, which means the decades-long plot in which Travis and Taylor brainwash America into getting routine vaccinations is complete.
Age was a running theme, with Stewart first taking on President Biden.
Jason Kelsey or Travis Kelsey?
Mama Kelsey. I understand she makes great chocolate chip cookies.
How do you go on TikTok and end up looking older?
And then his likely Republican contender, Donald Trump.
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is not an old man.
He's an old man! He is objectively an old man!
And what followed, the focus of President Biden's memory last week also was front and center of Stewart's commentary.
The president was in front of and on top of it all, coordinating and directing leaders.
Did anyone film that?
Stewart even turned the tables on himself.
We need more than just the same show with an older yet familiar face. Like, let someone else run the show.
Talking about the election, right?
I said what I said.
It was so good.
So good.
Monday night is not going to be enough.
No,
I can already
no.
tell that.